different people, and some of the community are not even in the community, but want to get into the community, and our next talk is some kind of getting into the community, so let's give him a warm welcome. And
thank you. So my name is Ben, and I'm going to present the results we have gotten from reverse engineering x86 processor microcode. And this was a joint work, couldn't have done it alone. And it was all done here on the Ruhr University coreboot. And yeah, before I start, let's look at the binary block situation in coreboot. You still have some you can live without, some you can't live without. And the problem is, sometimes you don't even know if you can live without them. So for example, you have all the input blocks and you have the AMD blocks. And we looked at one of the AMD blocks. So we looked at the CPU microcode. And as some of you, or maybe most of you know, microcode is loaded into the CPU, usually on boot up. So coreboot has actually a driver to do this. Also the Linux kernel has a driver to do this. And this is just a block. AMD used to have a website where they just posted these blocks, and you could download them, integrate them into your BIOS or into your Linux kernel. And as it says here, usually, sometimes you can go without them, but it also says that they are redistributable to binary and partially reverse engineered and covered by an auth signature. This holds true for fairly recent ones, but for older AMD CPUs, it isn't that much of a strong crypto. So we actually got to reverse engineer them and apply them custom updates to AMD. So why do we even have microcode? I mean, just design your CPU without microcode, use hardware for everything. Well, it turns out x86 is one of the most complex instructor sets we have. Red, pretty simple, but already not that simple because you need to adjust the EP, you need to adjust the stack, and you need to pop something from the stack. So yeah, a bit of a trouble. But then you have fairly long instructions that do some things that you don't actually expect your CPU to be doing. For example, takes the absolute of a variable. Then you start getting into prefixes that change the variable length of an x86 instruction again. And then you can do combine prefixes. So you got 4 prefixes on the same instruction. That's fairly okay. And then you have extensions, and this is the longest x86 instructions in terms of representation. So decoding all of this only with hardware, a bit tricky. So we start looking into micro-ops. For example, this pretty simple opcode translates to, let's just say, 3 opcodes internally. You load the value, you store the value, and then you increase the stack pointer. Looks already pretty simple, and actually, the right side, this is what your CPU actually runs internally. And this is how it does the translation. You start by decoding the instruction, you put the decoded instruction into the scheduler, this puts it in the pipeline, and then all these different units get fed from the pipeline. You have your standard ALOs, AGUs for first generation, and some ALOs also can do integer multiplication, usually in one of them. And then you've got the floating point units and all the extension units. And the pipeline just distributes it to the different units. So we zoom in a bit more into the decoder. First of all, any instruction you load gets put in the instruction buffer, and then the actual decoding starts. And AMD, at least K8 and K10, they have 3 short decoders. Short decoders are completely hardware-based. They are really fast, and they are used for really simple instructions. For example, your standard add and so. And after you can decode 3 of these at the same time, they are packed and put to the scheduler. Then you have longer instructions. And more complex instructions, they are used decoded in the long decoder. You can only decode 1 of these per clock cycle, but it's still done in hardware. And then you have these really long instructions that are really difficult to implement, and these go through the vector decoder. And the vector decoder is actually your microcode engine. And it is kind of a hybrid between software and hardware. So let's zoom into the microcode engine. you have a microcode ROM. This is what stores kind of the, let's say, firmware. This stores the microcode. And this is extended by microcode RAM, where we can load our updates into. And then you have a lot of circuitries that make it all run. But for us, the most interesting things are the match registers. Match registers are linked via a comparator to the fetch units that fetches on the microcode ROM. So anytime we fetch from an address that is set in a match register, this happens. We get control into the microcode RAM we just wrote. So we have a way to intercept the decoding process of any of these trials and get control. Usually, this is used to bug and to fix bugs. And this is also the reason why you have updated microcode. Because, yeah, famous intercepted bug. But don't worry, we still have these bugs. For example, the calculate bug, this requires a microcode update to fix. And also AMD had some. The Optron TLB bug. And of course, Risen also has their fair share of microcode updates. And the vendors do this because instead of requiring an hardware recall, you can just say to BIOS vendors for example, Linux distributions, here, just ship this block, apply it to the boot process, and the CPU will run. So we looked at the blocks, and we wanted to know what is actually happening. So we also did some research around, and this is what we started with. We had the update drivers in Linux code. So applying the block itself, not really much of a big challenge. We had some updates, so we had something to look at. We mostly gathered them from the Linux update packages and also from coreboot. Then the update header is mostly known. Some fields of which weren't that correctly specified, but most of it was known. And also, as I'll show you in a second, there were hints that there's no strong cryptography protecting this microcode. And this means we can change it. We can even decrypt it and reverse engineer it. And some sources that give you some high-level details on how all this stuff works. So, for example, you start reading AMD patterns. And the funny thing is, a lot of the total details are documented in there. So you start learning about the x86 instruction set. This is still used inside the AMD K10. And while not all of the details in the patent are still correct, give you a good starting point. Then you have a chip architect. They actually published die shots of a D-layer AMD K8, so we could look at details of how it actually looks like in hardware, which will come in handy in a second I'll show you. Then you have the Optron exposed. This was what provided us with the hint that there's no strong crypto behind it. They did some timing tests and just flipped some bits inside there, adjusted the checksum, and the CPU accepted the update. They didn't know what it was doing, but they showed that you can apply updates. Then you have a thesis that looked at the whole landscape of x86 processor microcode updates, and also include some Intel measurements, some AMD measurements on newer platforms. And then you have the work of Arrigo, and he built some amazing things with microcode, but most likely he's not allowed to tell anyone about it because, yeah, from what we gathered, he is working closely with an AMD engineer, so he's kind of an advantage there. So, what do we need to update microcode? First of all, you need to do in privilege mode. A user program can't just load a new microcode update because this would break everything. So you just load into RAM, write the virtual address to this MSR, and you're done. Actually, a lot of things happen behind the scene, and this write MSR for instruction takes a lot of cycles to complete. We are speaking about thousands of cycles in a single upload. And an important feature of microcode patches, they're not persistent. If you reboot the CPU, it's in its state shifted. So this means we didn't break a single CPU in our tests. Pretty helpful. So the microcode update header is also known, and the most important field is the checksum. The algorithm for this one is actually known, and the Linux kernel uses it to verify that the microcode is valid. And yeah, up until the match registers, this is known, and after that, the actual microcode starts. And this structure wasn't known, and we reversed that. And the microcode is, you have triads. A triad is 3 microcode operation, each 64 bits long, followed by a 30-bit sequence word. So the sequence word just tells the microcode engine what to do next. These range from branch to this address in the ROM, return the encoding, return decoding to x86, and some call and return functionality. So our reverse engineering setting is we have some knowledge, but we have an unknown instruction set. We have a black box, we can query and see what comes out of it. So we can feed it inputs, feed it state, observe the output, and through that, we manage to infer structure and encoding. So what does this unknown instruction set look like? Well, like this. This is your AMD K8 update. At the top, you see the header. This just says it's the date for which this is the update for, the processor, the length, and, for example, the checksum. And then this is followed by match registers. FF for match register means it's not used. This doesn't match any microparameters. And these two are actually used match registers, so 2 locations in ROM have some erroneous code, so AMD patched them. So you can't really make out any instructor set, but if you stare at it long enough, you start seeing some patterns. So, first of all, this doesn't look like strong crypto. And also, sometimes it looks a bit shifted. So we had an idea of what kind of obfuscation method was used. So we built a framework. And for this, we used in total 4 AMD PCs, 1 K8, 2 K10s, and this one is a 4th node here, which is just an K8 laptop. And we wrote our own operating system, we dubbed it AngularOS, and the only purpose of this OS is to read things from serial, apply them to the CPU, and send state back. So we connected this to Raspberry Pi via serial, and because if you happen to throw random things at your CPU, you're most likely going to crash it, hang it, reset it, whatever. So we also have the GPIOs connected to the front and header of the mainboards, so we can reset it remotely. And the Raspberry Pi actually just controls the nodes, and we run our Python scripts on there. All of this, we can of course connect to the internet, and on the laptop we just develop everything and write our scripts, send it to the Raspberry Pi, and look at the results. So, first instantiation looked like this. This was just at our home, and you have AK8, AK10, 1 Raspberry Pi per board, because at this time we didn't really know much about it. And the current instantiation looks like this. We finally managed to use only 1 Raspberry Pi because these board mainboards, the Raspberry Pi is the most expensive thing of these setups. And you have a little USB here for your USB serial adapter, and a little breadboard that just has optocouplers to turn this setups on and off. So what we did do, we use processor output. The CPU is a huge black box. You give it instructions, you give it a state, and you give it a microcode update. Of this microcode update in the beginning, we only knew match registers. Match registers somehow specify what instruction we want to include. So we started with that. And then you feed to the CPU and run some test code, and you get state. And this state, in the beginning, mostly consisted out of crashing. So we started generating heat maps. Heat maps in the sense, at this location, our update crashed the CPU. Because crashing the CPU is fairly easy, you just feed it updates with all zeros. And so we know roughly where x86 instructors are located in microcode, and this gave us an important primitive. We could reliably trigger our own microcode to be executed instead of the one in the CPU. And that we used for some brute force. You just start flipping bits. And at some point, we got an update that succeeded, meaning it didn't crash the CPU. And this happened to be your add opcode that adds some immediate to AIX. And at this point, we had a starting point. Because now we can just work around this and start flipping bits and see what changes. For example, if you flip a bit in the immediate, of course you can add a different immediate. If you flip a bit in the operand that specifies the register, you add to a different register. And this way you can start reverse engineering the encoding. And this is how we did it. We started with a known opcode that works, and then we counted up the bits. This crashed, and this crashed. But we knew at some point, okay, this somehow is the operand, the operation, you have some operands, you have some flags that specify some other things. And at this point we were able to gather the meaning of microcode we write. But this little microcode RAM is nothing compared to the microcode ROM that is inside the CPU already. So we wanted to know what is actually happening in there. So we came up with a scheme to reverse engineer what is happening inside the CPU. For example, you want to know what happens at this location in the ROM. So you break at this location, so you get control into the RAM. Then you use the microcode jump to jump to the location you want to execute, and you break directly afterwards. This is just your standard x86 double intercept in some way, just a bit more low level. So you look at what's this single try changed, and you can guess roughly what kind of instructions are in there, because we already know what instruction types are there. So, and because only doing software is not as fun, we delayered the CPU. We happen to have someone in our team that has access to the necessary equipment, and this is a die shot of an AMD K8. And yeah, you have a lot of cache, your FPU takes a lot of space, and this one. This is the whole instruction decoding and microcode unit. And the one, the single blue thingies marked in green, these are microcode ROMs. These store the microcode that is embedded inside the CPU. And because we had access to an electron microscope, we could read out the ROM. And all these things, this is just an array of bits stored in the ROM, in the physical layer. And yeah, this is the kind of length you're looking at. And if you zoom in, you see these tiny dots. And depending on where this dot is, it is either S0 because it connects to ground, or it is 1 because it connects to VCC. And using this, you get a lot of microcode out of there. Some kilobytes, 30 kilobytes or something like that. And yeah, of course you don't do it by hand, you use an OCR software. So, what do we have? We have heat maps. We know where the microcode lives inside the ROM. And we're still working on actually knowing what is there. Because similar a bit to the x86 RAM, we also have a physical to virtual mapping, if you want to call it like that. Because if you start at the first ROM, for example, this is not at 0. So you need to do some more inferring to know where the instruction you just tried to probe is located and where the another one is. And we're still working on that. And we got around 29 macros, just some logic, arithmetic, load store, and really important for what I'm going to show you in a second, white x86 program counter. And of course some additional logic. And we can do quite some programs now, and we have finally understood the sequence word. So we know how to tell it, just go to the next try it and decode it. Say, okay, I'm finished with the instruction, give me the next x86 instruction, and branch to a completely different try it. And the funny thing is, the microcode has a substitution engine. For example, you don't say EAX, you say, give me the register that is in the opcode. And then the substitution engine will take care of writing the value of this register into the pipeline. And these are actually three opcodes. The first one and the first two are taken from proper updates from AMD. The third one we wrote ourselves because we couldn't find a good example for GCC. So we have a standard arithmetic instruction, and then, yeah, this this op mode was kind of confusing at first because internally the CPU can work with 3 operands. You can have a destination operand and 2 source operands like you would, for example, have on ARM. And so you can say, okay, do some operation on this source operand, store it there. Makes things a lot easier. And then something that is also weird, you can swap source and destination. Yeah, then you have some flag propagation bits, an op class, which is essentially just saying this is a rec op, this is a load op, and this is something totally different, we call it spec op. And yeah, then you have the load op, which just says, okay, loads this into the placeholder register. This placeholder register means in the opcode, for example, I say diff EAX. EAX will be replaced at this location instead of like MD5. So this says, load this register from this address. And you have 4 bits segment registers. These are your standard x86 segment registers, but there are also some that are not that don't have an equivalent in x86. So we actually found some storage space inside the CPU we can't explain. You can write it, you can read it, and it is lost on reboot. We have no idea what this is, but it's there. And of course you have your conditional jump, and it's just a condition you can branch on all combinations of the internal array flags. And this is not an x86 location, this is a microcode ROM location, a microcode RAM location. And lastly, we have an example sequence word. This just says branch to this location. So as you can see, a good part of the bits we understand. Some we don't. For example, the sequence words. This is a bit weird, but we know how to do it. So now that we know what is running inside, what can we do? We can augment existing instructions. And to do that, you need to somehow do the same thing this instruction it was designed to do, but also do something more. So we have 2 options for that. You can jump back to ROM, to the original implementation, or you can just, if it's a simple one, emulate it completely yourself. So IMO is easy because we found modification microops, shift right double, which is pretty simple, compare exchange, and we can emulate these without any trouble. So we are also microprograms, and microprograms can do a lot of things. We can do some instrumentation. This means, okay, I want this instruction to always trigger something more. Easily done. You can do really fun remote microcode attacks, because the microcode is applied without the user knowing it is applied, and then the user, up to now, didn't have any way to verify what is actually applied to a CPU. And yeah, who didn't want to do a control flow hijack in a browser without needing a vulnerability in a browser? And we wrote 2 variants of that, one for ASM.js and one for WebAssembly. And you can also do such an attacks on cryptographics, because using the conditional branch, you can introduce timing dependencies based on the data that is processed by the instruction. And if you design it cleverly, you depend on the key, and this is what you need for a side channel attack. So what do our microprograms look like? This is a diff trojan. This triggers on a specific value that you give to the diff instruction. So let's assume in T1D is the magic value we want to trigger this with. So you just abstract it and branch depending on if it is the same or not. And if it's not the same, you just do the standard diff things. Don't worry, this looks a bit weird. This is how internally your CPU does a division. So you OR some magic value onto the operand, and then you run the first diff instruction shift on the second diff instruction. No idea what these actually do, it's just how you do a division. And then you move it to a temporary register, because microcode has more registers than x86 has access to. We found 8, let's call them general purpose registers, and up to 40 or something that have changing values, that have static values, that have values that have something to do with your opcode, and yeah, you have a lot of registers to play with. And yeah, this is all just diff emulation, because we replace some logic of diff with our own code, and we need to emulate this form. And in the end, you just jump back to the rest of the diff. But If this jump evaluated to true, you instead land here. Which this is just padding because we are CPU in trials, so we always have 3 opcodes we need to fill with something meaningful. And then you add 1 to your x86 instruction point and write update. x86 in its variable length instruction means if you add 1 to the instruction pointer, you can do something totally different than was intended to do. So at this point, I'm going to show you a short demo. First, I'll show you a quick rundown of, of our development, how we actually developed this stuff. So this is part of a framework script you have, and this, for this you just use x86 instructions you want the CPU to execute, because AngularJS does nothing more than you give it a block via serial and it runs it. So you just save all the state, and this is just, okay, give me the EP and EBP. And then we apply the microcode update itself. This is done via your standard write MSR. Then we set some default values and run one of the instructions. I just back up the values because I'm going to override them in a second. And this one we added kind of late in the development process. The idea behind is we apply another microcode update after our test code ran. So the CPU is in a state where we know it doesn't do anything weird. Because to get the response we just generated, we need to go through calls, returns, and everything complex that is also handled in microcode up to the out B that pushes it back to our Raspberry Pi. And then we just have some code to push it at the right buffer that gets sent back to us. And let me just quickly. This means do not use this match register. And this is the microcode we're going to run in a second, but for now, we just assume, okay, we have no microcode update loaded, and as you can see, I should probably save this file for this to work. We just shifted EAX, which got saved in AZ, by some amount. This is so your normal semantics of SSH or D. But now, we hook actually SHRD. So what happens now, instead of the original implementation, this is run. So we move a constant into AAX and add something, and also move EDX to the next decode receipt into EDX. So as you can see, we changed the semantics of SRHD. Nothing useful there, but it shows what we can do. And of course, EBP points close to this one. And now, no, it's this one. This one. This is actually running on this little EPC here, and this EPC has an K8 CPU, so we can use our custom updates on it. And before I actually run this, I show you what's gonna run. So we have some HTML code, some JavaScript code, and essentially we are using just all of this glue code to load an WebAssembly module that's compiled to predictable binary code. And this whole array buffer is filled with some very special values. So you have a signature, and then you say, how much do you want to add it to your instruction pointer? And how long is the string I want to copy in there? It overrides some stuff, and then you say, oh, what do you want to run? And all of this is piped into this module. If you don't know WebAssembly, don't worry, I'm going to just quickly go over it. This one is actually what emits, well, tells the jitter to emit your shift right double. And then all of the rest is just so we get disaligned the instructions we need. So this one, disaligned by 1, gives you move ECX easy, jump 5, choose this, move this, and interrupt into the system call. And yeah, this is just to make sure Map assembly does this row fit because you gave it invalid code. And this one. So, as you can see, I have the trigger here, but this is not the trigger. So, what happens? You let it calculate, and because I have the debugger attached, we will have a lot of things because the solution is switched. So if you just step through it, you can see this just to get to the module. 1 second. Okay, and now we're inside the compiled JIT code we just saw. So you see the variable declarations that get moved into specific registers, and this is your shift ID. This one we augmented, but we're not the trigger value, so nothing happens. So let's continue, because this isn't fun. Again, we trap into GDB, and just skip ahead a bit. And now we have a problem, because GDB is going to lose control of this if we don't tell it where we are going to go. Just because I want to see it, I'm going to tell it where we are going to jump to. Okay. Let's look at that. Yeah. Sorry for that, it broke because GDB is not displaying correctly, so we're going to do it without looking at it. So we again break into GDB, and this time I'm just going to say, okay, run it. And again, we have a demo. Of course, it doesn't work. Yes, please. Yeah, an EPC, it's pretty old, and Firefox is not made to be run on this. Just give it a second. So again, we're gonna enter this time without the GDB. And I broke something. And I know what. If we have the time, we can just go now to the questions, because I'm going to quickly reboot, because let me go back. I'm just continuing with the... So we're going to go back to the demo once the EPC rebooted. So, of course, we have a lot of security issues with what I wanted to show you. So you have no signature. You can apply any update you want, and it's going to accept everything. You can do vectors, as I'm going to show you in a second, and it's not really fixable, because you would need to do a hardware recall, and do a hardware recall on CPUs that were last sold in 2013. AMD is not going to do that. You can do a Haggy fix, early in the boot, you just upload a microcode update that's going to break your update mechanism for this run. Pretty easy fix, but quite hacky. But all of these attacks, you need to already have a strong attacker because it needs to either modify your BIOS, your UEFI, or load the kernel module. And if someone has this power, you can do some other fun already. And you need an old CPU. So this might look scary, but in practice, it's not something that's going to spread like WannaCry. And before we come to your questions, this is a question I want to ask you. What is the story behind these two Git commits to the coreboot repo? Because someone committed AMD engineering sample updates, and some months later removed them. And this is kind of weird because these samples should never have been open to the public. But thank you for that, because they helped us. So if anyone has a story behind it, I would love to hear it. So, any questions?
Okay, questions? Please raise your hand right up because I'm really bad at spotting questions.
Hello, thank you. What's the cycle time for taking an electron image when running processor? So I guess you have to put it in a certain state and...
We didn't do an electron image of a running processor.
Okay.
It was dead at the time, we got
You had it without touching brain.
There are methods to do that if you want to, but they're really complicated, and actually you need to fit your whole main board inside a vacuum chamber. And that was designed to handle these CPUs, these little microcontrollers. It would work if you build a lot around it, but it's not that easy.
More questions? Not one? Oh, there.
Did you take a look at the check of the signing in the newer CPUs?
We have done some work on it, and it looks like it is really an author checks, sharp checksum. No, RSA.
Burned in the CPU.
Yeah, done in the CPU. So you would need to find a hole in there. We have some ideas what to do, but we're not at the point where we know exactly what we can do.
There's another question.
Hello. Are the Intel microcode updates anything similar to the AMD ones?
First of all, Intel didn't do any recrypto in the updates, so we couldn't look at them at all. And the next problem is the microcode already changed between K8 and K10, and K10 is based on K8. So if you go even one architecture further, it's going to change again. And for example, with the new Jaguar chips, or Wilson and Threadripper, they're completely different inside AMD already. So if you go to Intel, there's just no way we can apply. Well, we can apply the principles we found here, but not the real encoding we found. So most likely it's going to be completely different, and Intel's microcode is rumored to be far more powerful than what AMD has. It can also influence some other parts of the CPU. Other questions? If not, the demos. There's another question.
Would you recommend, from a security standpoint, is it wise to just leave the CPU with the ROM that it was burned in, or is it wise to just update it and run whatever Intel or AMD has put inside there?
If you only load the updates supplied by a vendor, there isn't much that can go wrong because you're already running the microcode supplied by the vendor, just a older version of it. Of course, these older CPUs mostly run without any microcode updates, but if you go to the newer Intels, usually you should really apply this, as you might get some weird behavior. And yeah, so in general I would say, see that you get the ones signed by your manufacturer, and these should be fine.
There's one more question in the back.
And today nothing works.
So, have you observed any inconsistencies when you updated microcode on AMD CPU? I mean, it's more likely equal to late microcode update, and AMD seems to say avoid it at all costs, even implementing module, which is doing especially like early microcode instead of late one. Is my question clear enough?
You're asking about the behavior you have when you have multiple cores on the same CPU, right?
Yeah, but I'm asking possible inconsistencies which you observed on an SMP.
Major limitation is Angrias, what we're using for tests, doesn't have multi-threading support or multi-core support. So we just use one core, and of course we can extend it, and this one's something we're working on currently, and we just want to see what happens if you feed different cores, different updates, and we expect some really weird behavior out of that. And for example, just to give you an idea of what kind of CPUs we're talking about, the one I did the demo on is a standard dual core with AMD's version of hyper-threading, and we also have an hexa-core that also is an old CPU architecture, so we can also use this one for our tests. So we'll see what happens, and if we can, we're going to run 6 cores with different microcode updates and see what's going to explode.
There was still one question in the front here.
So you started your presentation with showing the short decoder and long decoder and into decoder. Can you entice the CPU to hook into short opcodes?
Most likely there's a way to do that. And we have some ideas how to do it, but we have no idea actually how to really do it. Most likely there's a way, because if you make an error in a short decoder, you want to fix it with microcode. So most likely there's a way, but our guess is you need to write to some specific MSRs or to registers that are only accessible for microcode, because if you look at the updates, there's a functionality in there that allows you to run microcode directly after applying the microcode update, instead of giving control back to the CPU already. So I guess that it has something to do with that, but we're not sure yet.
So is the task of the microcode just changing the translation of opcodes into the micro-ops, or is there other stuff you can change with it?
On the AMD architecture we looked at, most likely yes. It is only there to translate the outer x86 instruction set into the original this one. But most likely you can access some features that are not accessible from x86 and do some stuff with them, but we haven't found them yet. At this point we essentially know how to implement a new instruction. So we can give new semantics in x86 instruction, but you can't touch any internal stuff yet.
Well, that'd be interesting to use that for something. Good. Thank you.
Let's try this again. I have no idea, usually it works, but yeah. As you can see, we get some weird errors. This is because I wanted to pop out Xcalc from Firefox. If you want to see how this works, we have a video of the Usenix presentation we gave, and there it worked. I'm really sorry. So, no more questions? So,
Okay, thank you very much.